Okay, hello everyone. My name is Laura Halpin, and I am engaging in another Cradle conversation, and I welcome you here. I am recording from my home in Walnut Creek, California. It is the stolen land of the Bay Miwoks. I use she, her pronouns, and I am very excited to welcome a new friend and guest to this Cradle conversation, Ahakha Coman. And I just want to say hello before I introduce you.
Hi, Laura. Glad to be here.
Very excited to have you. Ahakha is someone that I know from her online presence. And so it's really fun for me to learn the depth of her experience, which only kind of fleshes out what I already know from her. But Ahakha is a speaker, a teacher, a consultant. She is the founder of an organization called Awake at Work, which focuses on leading, teaming, and coaching for genius. So working with a lot of individuals and organizations, from my understanding. She is a certified expressive arts therapist, has a professional certificate in spirituality, health, and medicine, a master's in organizational and leadership development, and a master's in consciousness divinity. So you must be 85 years old to have all this education behind you.
Some days it feels that way.
And so I wanted to ask you how, if there's anything, given all your experience, and you're an author, which I'll link to your books when I post this talk, but The Law of Emergence, Living Your Soul's Blueprint for Brilliance, and The Proof, a 40-day program for embodying oneness. So I am interested how all of this experience and education is showing up for you now. What's your current expression or focus?
Mm-hmm. You know, it's interesting to hear you reflect back to me some of my journey and what I know about, even though some of my journey has resulted in certification and education. What's true is that it's always been following some sort of soul impulse to heal, to evolve, to learn, to kind of go beyond status quo in myself and in culture. And so when I hear those things reflected, and I said this in another conversation yesterday, that it feels like all of those ingredients are coming to a culmination point in the work to help us get free of oppressive, limiting, disconnected systems and organizations and relationships. And some of how that's showing up is, partnering with others to do the work of diversity, equity, and inclusion and anti-racism work. But all of that has somewhat fortified me to keep also looking at myself as a cause of that, as a part of the change, which I think requires, if we're going to do it in a focused and sustained way, a lot of presence and a lot of devotion and a lot of clarity and a lot of willingness to let go of that which does not align with that overarching intention. So I'm still in process, still trying to listen as deeply as I can to my soul and to culture and what it's asking of me and of us. Yeah.
Thank you. I didn't tell you that I was going to ask you about this, but I see you working really closely with Oni Marchbanks,
Mm-hmm.
doing art, and there's certainly anti-racism work that seems combined. So would you tell us a little bit about that? Surprise.
About my relationship with Oni?
Or just that, well, your relationship or your work together.
Yeah.
Maybe it's both.
Yeah, you see a big smile that comes when you just even um, say her name and bring her into this space. So I feel really grateful for the question. We've known each other and been in each other's lives for about 13 years and have weaved in and out, but always maintained a connection. And it was maybe 2 or 3 years ago when I really started waking up to my own privilege, my own racism, blind spots, that I reached for her and was, I think, ready. We were ready to reach for each other in a different way. And she had been just kind of going along, aware of all these things, but in some ways just trying to live through it. And when we came together, we started doing work on our own and sharing our work. Me as a white woman, her as a Black woman, had very different journeys, but we really bordered and held each other in that work and shared. And then out of that relationship and that connection, we've started showing up together in the work of, we work together in anti-racism work. We're going to be offering something called Courage in the Crucible that we start tomorrow.
Oh, tomorrow.
And then we're also working on several community projects, some of them year-long commitments, engaging different aspects of health communities for racial equity, health equity. And so we're also showing up together in that work. And, we have a very deep and committed friendship, and we've navigated some very tricky territory with each other and come out the other side. And how can we show up in shared power, in respect and understanding of our different experiences in life? So it's one of the most loving, learning, devoted relationships I think I have in my life. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
Yeah, it's very much, yes. And you're based in Portland.
I am actually in Bend, Oregon now.
You're meant, okay.
I'm in Bend.
Okay.
But yeah, Portland and Seattle have been kind of my home base for most of my life. But
And so the offerings that you're offering, are they mostly, well, in person? Is anything in person right now? But is it more local work?
No, I usually travel quite a bit for my work, and Oni and I generally offer our work together in person. And right now, because of where we're at, transitioning a lot of that online.
Okay. All right. Well, you know that every Cradle conversation has 4 questions, and I neglected to do this earlier in our conversation, but I just want to acknowledge the people who will be participating in our conversation across time and space. And so I just want to welcome everyone here to come close, to feel the connection that we're weaving through these conversations, and with the intention to cultivate some courage and community and comfort along the way. And as I've said over and over again, the cradle is also, it has that suggestion of birthplace. And so it is my belief, and the more I have these conversations, the more that I believe it, that so much culture cultivation comes from these kinds of conversations and connections. So I welcome you here. Thank you so much for being here. All right, so Ahakha, the first question is, what cradles you?
I really love what you did before this conversation started, which is invite a connection to my body and inhabiting it more deeply, and having a relationship with breath and life force and receiving. And at a foundational level right now, I think that's one of the things that's cradling me, is paying attention when I'm on the surface of myself or outside of myself, or up into the mind, and remembering that there's a really deep resource inside of me to come down into my body, not just be aware of my body, but really inhabit it and allow myself to be nourished by breath, by life force, by nature. I've also been doing a lot of art. You can kind of see one of my paintings back there. I've been doing a lot of art, not only for myself, but for others. And, one of the things I know from like expressive arts is that there's a way that art can make sense of what is, I can feel the tenderness of that. Like art can make sense and hold what is so complex and uncertain and nuanced. Like there's a meaning that happens in the relationship to doing art, and also a way to see and sense our soul's movement in this time. And the expressive arts really were born, I think, after World War II, where a lot of these different modalities, whether it be visual arts or the movement arts or intuitive arts, theater arts, to really help heal the soul, to remember the soul, to heal fractures. So art on a personal level, but also art on a collective level.
I think that during this time, it really is the artists that I'm looking to, especially I think the writers, because that's who, that's what I think I have most readily available. But it's really through that creativity that we almost have, it's not like a logical thing. It's like lower than that. It's deeper than that kind of weaving, mapping, meaning. And it's amazing to me how much I value artistic expression that's grown out of different times,
Yeah.
And so I appreciate you bringing just the suggestion of, and kind of an invitation through what you do, through just any kind of creative expression.
Anything that helps us stay more fluid and less constricted and shut down. Because there is a collective trauma that is also touching our individual trauma. And we all are in different places with what we're experiencing right now. And so anything that kind of can keep us fluid and less frozen or rigid or disassociated. And I think that really helps. I think the other thing, as you were asking about the cradling, again, this feels so tender, that I have a relationship with Cradle, but I even have a more vivid embodied relationship with Crucible right now. And that is a time for many of us that there's a lot of transformation happening within us, and a lot of ways that we're being called to see more clearly what we haven't seen, and to feel what we've abandoned in ourselves and in culture. And that isn't necessarily comfortable. It's really been uncomfortable. Like, for example, one of the things that I've noticed as I'm going through this time, and one of the things I committed to in myself was like, I'm going to go right through this. I'm going to do my best not to abandon and push away any feeling. And as I said that, one of the things that was most uncomfortable and is most uncomfortable for me is to experience my anger and my rage. There's been many visitations of that in this time, and it often comes at the end of the day, and I'll feel, we might call it anger, but it's also life force and it's also power. But it's been incredibly uncomfortable to feel in my belly that as I can contain it and feel it and experience it as best I can, stay with myself and that experience, it seems to move up through my heart and throat and into my, in and out of my head. And usually the next morning when I wake up, I feel more clear, more sovereign, more empowered, more fueled. And that's kind of the most vivid and potent experience I'm having, whether it be anger, or whether it be deep grief and sadness, or kind of just a hopelessness or a depression. Or today, when I woke up, there was a joy and a celebration, and to not push any of those experiences away, but to be able to feel them based on not only my own experience, but what's happening in the collective and in our community.
Yeah.
And so that's why I use the word crucible. But to go into that, transformation, to say yes to what's arising that wants to be attended to, requires that we also have some cradling, so that we have the capacity to do that. And I also just want to acknowledge that not everybody has the capacity based on the experience they're having right now. And there are many reasons why people are in different challenges and experiencing different levels of trauma. So I also don't want to shame or elevate that we should feel cradled, or that we should be able to do this transformation. I feel privileged that right now I do have that capacity. And just being able to show up day in, day out and survive is also a real experience, and a valid one.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you for saying that. While you were talking about noticing your feelings and saying yes to the transformation, I was thinking of, I don't know if you've ever read it's the Rumi poem, The Guest House. Have you seen that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway. Okay, thank you. So the second question is, do you have a cradle to offer us?
I think in some ways a spaciousness to allow ourselves to be however we are, moment to moment, and let that be I don't even know the word, but that is enough, that is valid, that is sacred, that is meaningful, in all the different ways that we might be showing up, and to really bring some equanimity to that, whether it be, okay, I'm eating cookies and zoning out to Netflix, or actually I'm really resilient today and I'm creating these conversations with people like you are. I think there's something to be said for extreme gentling and gentleness with our own experience, and as we do that, being more available to bring that presence to others. It's capacity for us to regulate, but also co-regulate with each other. Being aware that, our neuroception, that threat detection system that operates below conscious awareness, is scanning 24/7 right now for threat. And we're in collective threat, and depending on our experience right now, we're going to have varying degrees of feeling threat. And when we're in that state of fight or flight, or even complete shutdown and disassociation, there's no way we can be at our best. So how do we use the breath and the body and whatever we have at our whatever we have access to help us regulate and co-regulate? And I don't think I can underestimate the value of connection in this time, where we're nourished, where we're met, where there's some level of attunement and compassion. I know not everybody has access to that again, and I just feel a lot of compassion for that experience.
So what I hear you offering us is really an invitation for extending to ourselves spaciousness and gentleness, allowing what is with gentleness. And what I heard you say was that it's it's a substantial step toward co-regulation, is just that, like, I'm just going to let it be. And that as we do that, that we actually are offering that to other people, you know. Is that kind of right?
I think that's exactly it. I think the other reason why it feels important, to the best of our ability and capacity right now, to metabolize our experience, especially our emotional experience, is that to the degree that we leave ourselves, we have that distance to travel back to ourselves. So I have concern about mental health and trauma and well-being on the other side of this, or not on the other side of that, as we emerge into a new experience. And you know, what kind of capacity, because we're going to have new creations and rebuilding and healing work to do. So for those of us that can, metabolizing as much of our experience is really important, so that we are ready to meet what is, and to support others, to reach for others, to resource other people and ourselves and our communities. So that's part of my commitment to myself right now, is to the best of my ability to be with the grief, to be with the anger, to be with the joy and the gratitude and the excitement. And that's been an edge for me too. And I guess that would be another cradle. Like, when there is joy, when there is aliveness, when there is excitement, allow yourself to the best of your ability to have that experience, because that's life as well. And that will also fortify us. So,
Feel your feelings as you're feeling them.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what about, this is the third question, do you have something that we could practice? And I really appreciate you just sitting with the questions that I ask you. I feel like I do that a lot with the answers I receive. I just need to, like, just sit in them, you know, have them move through me. So I just appreciate watching you do the same with my questions. Okay, sorry to interrupt. Do you have something to offer?
As far as a practice that we could do together right now?
Yes. Thank you. And now or in the future, but yeah, whatever.
Yeah. I'm just feeling for that. I mean, at a very simple level, I think about how we accompany ourselves and our breath and our body, and even just simple, like finding a place in your body that needs accompaniment, and putting your hands there gently, dropping our awareness to that place, bringing that compassion and gentleness there. And if it feels right, to bring maybe the breath more fully into that place. Noticing what's alive and here, whether it be a tenderness or a heartbreak or a sadness or a longing or a joy or a delight, just noticing the lived experience in whatever part of our body is asking for accompaniment. And if it also feels right, there might be some gentle, slow movement over that part of the body where you're sensing that part of your body right now. It's my chest and the core of my heart. I'm sensing my core of my heart, and I'm also feeling the core of my heart sensing my hands. So there's a reciprocal relationship of sensing and attuning. So breathing and just noticing very maybe slow, very present movement over that part of your body. And listening, is there something that it has to communicate, a message, a need, a truth? And then maybe just saying thank you, acknowledging the relationship that you have with your body, with yourself, and opening your eyes.
Thank you so much for
As I was sensing into that, I felt kind of it feels almost like a part of my heart that's breaking open, a way that I've hidden myself and my love, played it safe. And it feels like there's some sort of opening of the love that I have and the love that I want to express and bring more of. And it feels vulnerable. But I could feel like, oh, there's something that almost like when the seed is pressed down with the soil to get it to, germinate and sprout. It kind of has that kind of felt sense in the core of my heart right now.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
and I think about how many for us, our own transformations have been aborted or stopped.
Say that again. I didn't hear you.
There are ways that we stop our own transformations from
Mm-hmm.
coming all the way through. And I'm aware of these in my own life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. I loved, I was very much with my hands on my chest. And when you suggested the heart kind of being aware of the hand, it was just that reciprocal suggestion was really beautiful to experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to ask you about the word accompany, because you said it a few times. And then could you tell me just a little bit more? Use it again in a sentence.
Yeah. Well, in some ways, what we just did was a practice of accompaniment. There's a part of me, part of my experience that wants presence, that wants attention, that wants tending, that wants to accompany. I think about when we accompany someone on a journey, like we're walking together.
Mm-hmm.
So in some ways, what we just did was a practice of accompaniment. Can I bring my intention, my care, my deep listening to some aspect of myself that wants to be known, that wants to be expressed or wants to be given, wants to be born, as you said, in the cradle. And then again, as we do that with ourselves, I can't remember which conversation it was. It might have been with Nick, where they said, the relationship we have with ourselves is reflected in the relationship we have with our children,
Oh, yeah.
our lovers, our friends, our community. And again, it can feel some ways indulgent when we talk about it isolated from the fact that we're interconnected and we're in relationship. And so when we do this attunement and accompaniment here, we're more available to be nourishment and present and have the capacity for true empathy with other people for what they're experiencing, instead of shutting that down because of our own discomfort, because we haven't metabolized our grief or felt our grief or our rage or our sadness. Or so there's we become more of a cradle presence as we accompany ourselves.
Absolutely. The word martyr popped into my head as you were talking, and I think there's so much conditioning around kind of the veneration of martyring. I was raised Catholic, so it's a very strong thread culturally. But I think the suggestion that you actually become better by sacrificing, by ignoring your own needs to meet somebody else's. And I think there's a lot of unlearning in my life and in my, you know, my client circles, where I feel like just that accompanying of self is so important. And I like that you use the word indulgent, because it can become indulgent if it stops there, you know.
Right. 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 I think we have to hold the web of relationships that we're having with ourselves, with the divine or source, with the people in close to us, our community, the larger world, in when we're in these practices. Like, it's not an isolated only for me. It's larger than that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The fourth question is, do you have a vision or a blessing for the collective?
You know, it's interesting. You just talked about your Catholic upbringing, and the phrase from Jesus just came: "Love one another," and that love can be fierce, and it can be destructive of things that are oppressive and harmful. It's creative and liberatory. My hope is that we have great discernment with our love on what needs to be dismantled and what it's time to kind of constitute or you know, compost in ourselves and in the culture, and what new relationships and possibilities for a transformed state, for a new way of being together on this planet, are also tended and born. And I think we sit at that very it's like excruciating beauty. There's death and birth here simultaneously. And how do we sit at that crossroads with as much love and truth that we can bring? I know in this time, there's a lot of dismantling of internalized structures and beliefs that have harmed me and others, and shaped how I've related. And there are also, I'm seeing also new capacities in myself for connection and relationship and support and vision. All of that is happening. That's why it feels like a crucible, like I guess a crucible and that kind of fiery alchemical process. And there's also a cradling of the new happening. May we be in that place with as much love and truth and discernment.
Mm-hmm. I really welcome that blessing, the vision of loving one another.
Yes. Yes. It's funny that this hat wanted to be on my altar as I sat here with you. Okay, this is my blessing.
Awesome. Thank you.
And the second part of that scripture, I believe, is love one another as I am loving you. So also remembering that there is depending on your beliefs and where you sit, there is a life force, a love force, divine, spirit, soul, whatever our word might be for it, nature, ground, that also is transmitting and sharing love with us. And part of our practice is how can we receive that and be fortified in this time. Yeah.
I welcome that too, the reminder to receive what is offered. So I want to thank you so much for coming into this conversation with me. You are one of the growing group of people that I didn't know before I invited into a conversation. And so it's just, it feels lovely to be in this kind of space with you. It really feels like a gift to me. So thank you.
Absolutely. Same. You know, as we were coming into this conversation, you were leading us. I could feel your tenderness of heart. I could feel your wisdom and your seeing. And then I could feel like a deeper kind of belly level commitment to this work that you are doing. And in that kind of sensing of your own core, I felt such affinity, and like we are walking together different ways, different paths, but there is an accompaniment and a bordering. And so I just want to thank you for hosting these conversations, for reaching to such an amazing group of people, to include all these voices and perspectives, and certainly the invitation for me to join you. Thank you. And I feel grateful to know you.
Oh, same. Thank you so much. And just that offering and acknowledgement of being able to accompany one another, like I'm gonna hang on to that. I'm really gonna hang on to that.
Yeah.
So before we end, I just want to again call everyone close and thank whoever is connecting with us for their presence, and to acknowledge our growing connection and community across time and space, and how much it is a blessing for me to know that in any way these conversations are rippling outside this exchange that I'm having with you is really an amazing thing. And so I just wish everyone with you your blessing of love, both to extend it and receive it.
Yes.
And thank you so much again. So
yeah, thank you for weaving love in this community in this time, Laura. Thank you.
thank you.